join us about 1:30. We got a lot more on the show, so stay tuned right here. First and foremost, though, at this time, and we're streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, at this time, as always, we're happy to have with us the one and only Michael Tomasky of the Daily Beast. Let me say hello to Michael first, and then there's another guest joining us that's going to be with us. Michael, good morning to you, man. How are you?
I'm okay, Mark. How are you?
Good. I know your latest is about Giuliani. We'll get to that, but I want to, for a moment or two, bring on our friend Michael Steele, former chair of the RNC. Michael, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Good morning, Michael. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Okay, Michael. Fancy meeting you here.
Well,
yeah, right.
The reason I invited Michael on, Michael, is, you know, I don't know, some people are a little weary of talking about Omarosa. I get it. But Michael has some information that I think might be useful in this conversation, as she is describing herself as having been there as the only African-American, representing African-Americans, only African-American in the Trump administration. Now, Michael, you shared with me on yesterday, and I think you also said it on MSNBC Sunday evening, that could have been different. You actually presented the White House with other potential African-American candidates for staff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, myself, along with a handful of other former African-American Republican administration officials, got together, sat down, and worked with Chris Christie when he was head of the transition to put together a list of interested individuals who were wanting to come into the administration and wanting to serve. And it was a pretty significant list. We had the former head of the Office of Personnel Management on our team, so it wasn't like we didn't know where the bodies were, so to speak, and identify those folks. People sent in resumes. All of that data was collected and presented. Now, Chris Christie then got removed from his leadership post, but we still stayed in touch with the White House transition team, and certainly even in the first quarter of the new administration's term, trying to work those placements as the administration was publicly saying it was, having a hard time trying to fill some of these positions. We were working back channels to provide the resumes and the bodies for that. What we then found out, though, was part of the logjam was Omarosa blocking the names of certain individuals that, particularly for senior level staffing, so assistant to the president, same positions that she was holding, those individuals were not considered as part of the West Wing. And, it's interesting. I was reading a report this morning on Axios how folks in the White House were talking about they were scared of her because she was African American, she was close to the president, she was a woman, all of those things. And they largely she used that as a cudgel in many respects to block the names that were coming in. And this is the part that was killing me, Mark. I mean, these are individuals who are credible former administration officials at all levels. So these weren't gadflies. These were people of substance.
Right.
And so there was a clear threat there that became very, very frustrating for me and my team working with the White House. And we just stopped because it was very clear that these names were not going to be taken seriously. They were not going to be offered positions. And then we just moved on.
That's amazing. Why do you think she blocked other people from being hired?
I think there was, this sense that lack of respect for Black Republicans. I mean, I heard her say that on a couple of occasions. It has been, was related to me, by others who were in conversations inside the White House. Senior officials inside the White House who had conversations with her about how, she was not enamored of Black Republicans and thought that they were not worthy of being in the White House with Donald Trump, particularly if they weren't supportive of Trump during the campaign. We saw that with some African Americans who worked on other campaigns. Michael comes to mind, who had a position with Dr. Carson, but then when they found out, some of his op-eds that he wrote on behalf of the campaign, summarily fired him. So you had this sense that black Republicans were not to be trusted, and she used that and sort of spawned that thinking to justify blocking some really quality candidates. And after a while, folks just took their name off the list and didn't want to be bothered. But this idea that she was the only African American in the West Wing didn't have to be that way, because we had a list of at least 100 names of very credible people, certainly more credible and qualified than she, to move into positions to head the very department that she was heading.
And it kind of goes to her credibility. I mean, obviously she's calling Trump a racist now. That's not breaking news to any of us. But
right.
But if from what you're describing, she was the gatekeeper. There's another term we use for that in the black community.
Yep. Exactly.
Called crabs in a barrel. I'm going to be the HNIC. I'm going to be the one in here. And I think that does even more to really undermine her character. Michael Tomasky, what do you think about this news?
It's interesting. It's not surprising to me at all what Michael describes, that she would do that. Watching this whole thing, I was watching one of the shows last night. Michael Murphy, the Republican political consultant, said, watching this Trump Omarosa thing is like watching the Battle of Stalingrad. You got nobody to cheer for. But,
right.
She's, look, maybe people can change. Maybe she's discovered something about Trump belatedly that a lot of the rest of us knew. But I don't have any. I don't think many black people are going to be flocking to work at that White House now. Let's put it that way.
Right. And what I thought you were going to say, which is also true. I don't think there are a lot of black people that are going to flock to her either. I think her credibility is in pretty bad shape.
Well, and Mark, can I speak to that? Because I think that's an important part, because it's not like, for a lot of these folks in the black community who were moving into that space, at that time, everything notwithstanding about the campaign and what Trump represented and what he said and all that, a lot of these are true public servants. They're men and women of color who have served in administrations, Republican administrations, who wanted to honor that continued service. So it's not like, they had this long history. This wasn't about President Trump as much as it was about serving in the administration.
Right.
But she's different. She has a 15-year history with him. And so this idea, even going back to her days on set with The Apprentice, knowing what she knew then, hearing what she heard then, and still now coming out and pretending as if this is all fresh, eyes wide open. All of a sudden, oh my God, I didn't realize that he was racist, that he was misogynist. I don't know how you didn't know that. As you noted, Mark, we saw it in the campaign. You've been with him for 15 years,
right?
So it's not credible in that regard. And to sort of have this plaintiff plea now that I'm complicit, that's to make us feel, oh, okay, I feel bad because at least you admitted you were complicit. Well, that's not enough. It's just not enough. Because the history is too long and too rich to ignore it. So,
are we giving her, Michael Steele? Last question for you: are we giving her? Is everybody giving her too much airtime and too much coverage? Do you think?
Yeah. I think we're going to get suckered into that. I mean, she's, it's going to be a drip every day to try to push her book sales up. And this is nothing more than that. This is nothing more than stringing this storyline out. This morning she's come out with another tape with the conversation with Ms. Pearson and others, about the N-word and whether Donald Trump knew about the tape or not. So you can expect every day or every other day, at least for the next few foreseeable days, you're going to get more dripping of tapes, and this storyline is going to continue.
Michael Tomasky, and I don't mean this literally at all. We've all speculated on what the silver bullet for this administration would be. Michael Tomasky, if a tape materializes of Trump actually using the N-word in his voice, might that be a silver bullet?
I don't think quite. No, I mean, I don't think it'll be shocking to us. It'll be shocking to the media. It'll be disturbing to a lot of Republicans, and I think sincerely so. But at the end of the day, what are their constituencies going to demand that they do? Right. A Republican House member, a Republican senator from a red state where there is a small African American population and where that's just not going to register as a big, huge earthquake. Yeah. What are those constituencies going to demand those guys and gals do about that? I don't think very much. So I think there'll be a lot of, it'll be a huge story. It'll hurt him. He'll lose, he's got this certain percentage of people backing him who don't really like him, but are backing him because of the good economy and stuff like that. He'll lose a certain percentage of those people. It'll hurt him, but I would stop short of saying silver bullet.
Okay. Michael Steele, thank you, my brother, for coming on.
You got it, friend.
And we'll be in touch. Miss you on Sirius XM, man.
Yeah, no, I miss it too, bro. But we got my podcast, Man of Steel, so you can still check out some good
Man
stuff.
of Steel. All right now. Love it.
All right,
take care, Michael.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.
Be well,
bye-bye. Michael. Speaking of crazy and peculiar Trump people, Michael Tomasky's latest at the Daily Beast on Giuliani. He's getting worse, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean every week it gets worse, and I don't know what to say. I mean, I could kind of quote myself some of the things I say in the piece, but I think what we have now is a man who was trained in the law, who was a former federal prosecutor, whose ideology, you and I may not agree with, but who was, worked in the Justice Department, worked as the premier federal prosecutor in the United States there in New York in the Southern District, spent his life defending the laws of the United States as he understood them. And now what he's doing is lawless. He's trying to get the people to hate the law and to believe that the law itself is lawless.
Amazing.
That's what he's trying to do. And he's doing it for this reason. Because his clients can't be indicted and tried, right? As long as he's the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. So there's no legal remedy for anything that Trump does, as long as under current law, as long as he's the president of the United States. There's only a political remedy. That is, Congress can act to impeach and convict and so on. So Giuliani knows that. So he knows it's not a legal question. It's just a political question. So what he needs to do is to muddy the waters and rile up public opinion against Mueller, such that public opinion will render Congress paralyzed and afraid to act and afraid to do anything. So, in other words, he's getting the people, getting the mob, if you will, to hate the law.
You also chronicle too. Now he is suggesting a special prosecutor to investigate the special prosecutor.
Yeah.
Either in the person of former Attorney General Mike Mukasey or former FBI Director Louis Freeh. You make the case why that's problematic.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're both qualified on paper. One's a former Attorney General, one's a former FBI Director. But they're both pretty ideological choices, very ideological choices. They're both also buddies of his. Freeh, when he was FBI Director, was well known as an antagonist of Clinton and a buddy of Ken Starr. And he's joined Giuliani in speaking before this Mujahideen al-Khalq group, the terrorist organization, former terrorist organization that Giuliani lobbied to get off the terrorist list. Then Mukasey worked with Giuliani, working with, this is a bizarre and complicated story that I lay out in the column, but this has to do with Erdogan and Turkey, and working to get this try to get this friend of Erdogan's freed from an American prison. And it's really instructive if you look at Turkey, and I would urge your listeners to look at what happened in Turkey in 2012, 2013. There was a big investigation, independent investigation going on, and they were zeroing in on all kinds of corruption in Turkey, and they were going to come out with a very explosive report. And Erdogan and his people spent those weeks and months literally using the phrases witch hunt and deep state. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's where those things come from. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's where our right borrowed those things from mm-hmm. Erdogan's Turkey. Think about that,
wow.
folks.
Wow.
And then Erdogan fired the investigators. Now, Trump can't fire Mueller directly, right? He has to replace Rosenstein and blah, blah, blah. And he still fears political backlash from that. So the workaround that they've come up with, if they can't really fire Mueller, is to investigate Mueller and try to dirty him up that way. But it's not democratic. It's not small d democratic. It's demagogic, and it's dangerous. And it heads us further down that dark path that that we're on.
Yeah, no, that's something else. It seems to me, though, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Giuliani at one point under investigation by someone because of his relation with Turkey? Am I wrong about that? It seems like I remember reading that somewhere. There was something that someone was taking a glance at.
Well, I don't remember. It does ring a bell. I guess I should know this, but the meeting with Erdogan that Giuliani and Mukasey had with Erdogan about this guy, this Turkish citizen held in an American prison, was in February of 2017. So that's when Trump was president and Sessions was the AG. So I don't know. I mean, it certainly got a lot of media scrutiny. I don't know if it got any official scrutiny, but it was an unusual meeting. I mean, that kind of diplomacy is usually conducted by people who actually work for the government of the United States.
Okay, so here's a headline from last year. This might be it, and I just need to dig a little deeper. What I just ran up on. Federal prosecutors, and this is in the New York Post of all places, the federal prosecutors in Manhattan accused former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, it says, of going over their heads to other officials in the U.S. government in an effort to get charges tossed against a wealthy and connected Iranian-Turkish gold trader with ties to Turkey's president.
Yeah. Okay.
The Fed said Giuliani, together with former federal judge Michael Mukasey, were hired to, quote, negotiate a disposition. That's what your article talks about, of the case against Reza. And now it doesn't say necessarily he was under investigation, but apparently in whatever form this was, they went on record.
Yeah.
Federal prosecutors did.
Yes. Okay, I remember now. So that's when Preet Bharara was running.
Right.
District.
Right.
And then he's out, so apparently that's probably all over.
It's interesting though, because and I may just be throwing this up. I may be just it may sound a little random, but I wasn't trying to be random. The reason I thought about that is because you lay out this man as a former prosecutor with a reputation of being a prosecutor, now attacking the whole criminal justice system, now promoting lawlessness. And I'm just wondering if he himself has done something wrong in any respect, be that Turkey, be that what he did with the New York Police Department, the FBI, when it came to Wiener's laptop, because we have reason to believe he was in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And God knows what else.
Right.
You know, when you got heat on you, man, you know, you start flailing yourself. So he may not just be acting in Trump's interest.
That's right.
He may just be, just just all over the place and completely losing it.
Yeah.
Because he himself it may bear. I mean, I would not be surprised if today James Comey, it wouldn't be random to me if James Comey said, well, you know what? We're looking at Giuliani too, by the way. We're going to call him in before the grand jury. I wouldn't. Yeah. That would not shock me at all.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, you could argue that he too has made statements that could be construed as obstruction of justice, just as Trump has.
Yeah.
But you hit it when you mentioned that the New York office of the FBI and the Anthony Weiner business and the reopening of the email investigation just before the election in October of 2016. Giuliani was in the middle of that, boasted on TV proudly that he was in the middle of it. Whether he did something that was illegal potentially is very hard to say. You know, he may have been involved in a chain of events that made information public in a way that was, unethical or violative of FBI rules or something. But whether illegal is obviously a higher bar. So we don't know. But it's it's entirely possible.
Yeah, yeah. Folks, check out Michael Tomasky's latest at the Daily Beast. Giuliani is just, and then he went on the thing to go on ABC and say you didn't say something when you actually said it.
Right.
I don't, and I think he thinks. See, here's the other thing. I'm gonna say this quickly. You make the case in your piece, and we all have to reasonably presume that Trump won't be indicted because there's this thing about indicting the president. Now, I hope they do, but let's say for the sake of argument they don't. Yeah. I wonder if Giuliani thinks he can be indicted, because it's like he's playing to a jury pool of all Americans.
Yes.
So, but if you think a president can't be indicted, why would you be dishonest to a jury? Why would you try to taint a jury pool? I wonder if they have some fear or some concern. I wonder if they're not convinced he won't be indicted. Yeah.
These are all good questions. I mean, who knows? There's clearly panic. Mm-hmm. These changing stories and some of Trump's tweets. And we don't know, since Mueller doesn't leak, we don't know exactly what he has. But, I mean, all of these things are possible. Now, speaking of Trump's tweets, let's finish up where we started with Omarosa. You saw Trump's tweet from 7:30 this morning?
Yeah, I just saw that. He called Omarosa. I just saw it. He called Omarosa a dog.
Yeah. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog.
Now, isn't that something?
Nothing's shocking anymore, I guess, but that one kind of is.
So you call a woman a dog? I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
What does that mean? That yeah. I mean, I'm being rhetorical, obviously.
Right. I mean, I don't know what to say, my friend. It gets worse and worse.
Yeah. Michael Tomasky, the Daily Beast, folks. His latest. Love that graphic, too, by Kelly.
Oh, isn't that terrific?
Yeah, Kelly Caminero, the
Kelly
Three Stooges.
Fantastic illustration.
Michael, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day, buddy. Folks,
you too.
We'll be right back. Beto O'Rourke's going to join us now. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke and vote. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.